Shalom and hello. I'm Chaplain Colonel Larry Baser of the National Guard Bureau's Office of the Joint Chaplain and Army Senior Chaplain for the Army National Guard. And it's wonderful to be able to celebrate with you in the field across the 54 and our world in various places, the lighting of the Hanukkah for the fifth night of Hanukkah. I've had the chance to light the Hanukkah in various places around the world, from a base in Kabul, Afghanistan, Camp Phoenix, to lighting it for Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz's Hanukkah party, to the White House, and in various other places. But at all times, it's the lighting of the candles, the light that burns brightly, that shows how we as American Jews, symbolized by this light, are Or L'Goyim, a light unto the nations, bringing hope and peace in a world that we desperately need. So wherever you are, I pray and hope that you will have a wonderful and joyous Hanukkah celebration, and that what you do is to be like the psalmist, to be able to be a light that helps others bring the world for peace and hope. Join with me for the fifth night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavoteinu bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. Happy Hanukkah.
Hey y'all, I'm Rabbi Karen Berger. I'm the Jewish chaplain at Fort Benning, Georgia. And today we are going to do a couple of things. One of them is to make latkes. So making latkes is super simple. I'm going to go over the ingredients right now. You'll need a potato. It can be a white potato or it can be a sweet potato. Sweet potato latkes, excellent. Whatever you do though, make sure their skin is well washed. In my family, we never peeled them because who needs to know? You'll need an onion. We're going to dice that up pretty finely. You'll need to peel these though. Garlic. Now, traditional latke recipes, they generally don't have garlic, but I like garlic because I think what savory dish doesn't do better with garlic in it? Then you're going to need a binder, something to hold it together. For that, you want an egg. 1 egg, 2 eggs. I'm only going to make 1 potato, so really I'm only going to use 1 egg. And finally, you need a little bit of additional starch. So this additional starch will help hold it together. It is flour. Now, some people use panko. Other people use matzah meal. Other people don't use anything at all, and they swear by the water in the potatoes. Whatever you want, doesn't matter. And finally, oil. You'll notice, if you can read this, and I know it's backwards, I'm using canola oil. You can also use soy oil. You can use olive oil. You can use peanut oil. Whatever you choose, you just want to make sure that the oil has what we call a high smoke point, because we want the potatoes to cook thoroughly through, and the oil will break down over time because of the water. So the first thing that we have to do is our sous chef work. Got to prep the stuff. So right now, I'm going to dice the onion and then get my garlic ready. And then I'm going to grate the potato. Oh, and I almost forgot. You also want some salt and pepper. And now I'm going to show you the trick to making excellent latkes every single time. You take the potatoes that you've already grated. I've rinsed mine because I don't want extra starch in it. I take some of that sea salt I got, put it into the latkes, and I cheat. I don't use a fresh lemon. Take the lemon juice, pour a little bit in, mix it up. Mix it really well. You want to make sure it's pretty salty. Ultimately, you're going to rinse most of that salt off. If you do this, two things will happen. First, it's going to wick out all of that extra potato moisture so that you get a really good latke that doesn't fall apart when you add the binder of the egg and the flour or matzah meal. And second, it'll season your latkes so you don't have to use salt before you cook. So y'all ready for trick number 2 for great latkes? Remember the lemon juice and salt we put into the potatoes? I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. Look at all that water. Wow. So here's what we do next. We're going to drain it out and squeeze out all the water and get the potatoes as dry as we can. See? See how much water is squirting out here? Wow. You wouldn't think there is that much, but there really is. And now we're going to mix the stuff together. We got the potatoes that we've squeezed out, right? Looks pretty awesome, hey? Some of that garlic that we've cut. Some of the onions that we put together. This is all to flavor here. I don't have a paper cup, but I do have a plastic thing I can throw away. And that egg is perfectly kosher and good to go. Okay, and then we're going to take that egg and we're going to put it into our mixture here. Just like that. Okay, and then I'm going to mix some flour. And then here's the trick. Use your hand. Don't be afraid. See how this is looking beautiful? That flour is going to bind it all right together. And then we're going to add a little bit of pepper. And this is ready to go. Okay, trick number 3. It's making sure that your oil is ready. Got to be really careful at this part. Watch. Step way back. That's how you know your oil is ready. And now we're going to make some magic. Now you have to be really careful on this part because this oil, as you just saw, is really, really, really hot. So you're going to take this and you're going to make a mop. You're going to make a small ball. And then you're going to put it onto something and straight into the oil. And I only made enough so that I can make 1 or 2 because there's only me here and my dog. My dog doesn't like latkes, even if I do. And you let it fry. And that is all there is to it. You'll know that it's ready because it'll start browning on the edge, just like this is. This is not quite ready. You want it to be good and cooked on the bottom, but not burnt. And there you go. 2 latkes. Get the inside really, really cooked, because who wants raw latkes? Yuck. And these are about the perfect color brown. So you want to take them off and put them onto a plate that has a paper towel or some sort of mechanism for soaking up the oil. Let's take a look at them and see what they really look like now. Yum. 2 perfect latkes waiting to be eaten. Now, the other thing that we traditionally eat besides latkes on Hanukkah is sufganiyot. And sufganiyot is just the Hebrew word for jelly donuts. And they're traditionally filled with raspberry. But I don't really like donuts. And I don't really like donuts stuffed with raspberry jam. So I'm going to do something different. I'm making a traditional apple fritter donut. So there are a fair number of ingredients when you make apple fritters. But if you do all your prep work ahead of time, it's very quick. And here's what you need. 1 Granny Smith apple, half of which has a rough grate, and half of which has a chop to 1/4 square. 2 tablespoons of packed brown sugar. 1/4 teaspoon salt. I generally use kosher salt. 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon and 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg. I've mixed them together. 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. And then we have 1 egg. I've already cracked this to make sure that it's kosher. I have 1/2 cup of tapioca flour. Now, the recipe calls for corn flour, but I don't like corn flour. So it's a 1-to-2 substitution. 1/2 cup tapioca. Then we have 3/4 cup of regular flour, just all-purpose flour, no thrills, no chills. 1/2 cup of sugar, and we will have half a teaspoon of vanilla and 1/2 cup of milk. So the recipe actually is pretty easy to do. The first thing that we do is we mix all of the dry ingredients together. So I'm going to put in my 3/4 cup of flour, my 1/2 cup of tapioca flour, which is substitute for the cornmeal. We're going to put in the 1.5 teaspoons baking soda, the 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, and the 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and the brown sugar. This 1/2 cup of white sugar that I have right here, we're going to save that for later. If you want an extra punch to it, use turbinado as opposed to regular sugar. So I'm going to take my handy dandy whisk, mix up everything all together, just so that it works just like this. And you do that just so that everything is evenly mixed. It's pretty easy. If you want, I like using my fingers. Take your fingers in there, break everything up. Make sure it's mixed in really, really well. Now I'm going to mix the wet ingredients together. So I'm going to mix in, and because I don't want to get anything dirtier than I have to, I'm going to use this mixing cup. That's 1 egg into the 1/2 cup of milk, and then the 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. And then, just like I did before, I'm going to mix all the stuff up together, just like that. Now, you can make this in the mixer, but I like not doing it in the mixer because you risk overworking the materials and the flour getting too gooey. So I generally don't do that. And then what you do is you mix the wet ingredients into the dried. You want to make sure everything is mixed up really well, but you don't want to overwork it. So don't beat it too hard. Okay, so this is about the thickness that I've got right now. And now we're going to fold in the apples. You want to do this gently because you don't want to overwork stuff. And you don't want to make the apples mush up too much because you want to be able to taste them after you fry them. So you just fold them in. Make sure you get a good mix. And this is what it looks like. It's almost ready to go. So now we're going to make this. And if you let your dough sit for a little bit, you'll notice that it's gotten a good bit thicker. And what we're going to do is we're going to make teeny tiny ones. I don't want them great big. We'll make sure that you get some of that apple. And when you put it in, now watch, when you put it in, you want to be really, really careful because this oil is really, really hot. Don't touch the oil. And once you put it in, don't touch the fritter until it's ready to turn. The other trick here is you don't want to put too many in. You want to give it room to fry all the way around. Will not take long, maybe 5 minutes total. I'm only going to put 3 in at a time right now. And here's what they look like so far. Let me do it the other direction. Here's what they look like so far. Yum. And it looks like what is almost ready to turn, so that's what I'm going to do next. Be very careful when you do this. They cook very quickly. And you'll see I have my handy dandy tongs for taking them out. And they're a perfect brown. 1, not quite, 2, and 3. Now, a few minutes later, we have a beautiful basket of fried apple fritters. Yum! Next, what we do is we take them and we roll them in cinnamon, sugar, and that little bit of salt. Just like this. And what you get is a lovely apple fritter that looks something like this, covered in sugar. And what you get is this, a lovely apple fritter that is fried a golden brown, covered in cinnamon sugar. So why is it that we eat latkes, which are oily, and sufganiyot, which are oily, or we eat salty foods? Well, the answers are really, really simple, and because I am who I am, I'll tell you what they are. We eat latkes, which is what these will be, and sufganiyot, because they're fried in oil. And it's in commemoration of the Maccabees, who rededicated the oil so that it was able to be used on the menorah during Hanukkah. We eat salty things in commemoration of Judith, who killed the Assyrian general. And the way that she did this was she gave him beer and salty foods. And as we all know, salty foods make you thirsty and make you want to drink more. So now that we have these lovely foods that we've made, this latke and this apple fritter a la Karen, which we're saying is kind of a sufganiyot, the real question is, which will you choose? Which wins? And the real debate is often, do latkes win or do matzo balls win? Well, gotta tell you, grew up in Texas. And if you grew up in Texas, you know that any Texan, just like me, will tell you that you can fry anything. So it's really not even a question. You can have whatever you want. You can have the latke, or you can have the sufganiyot, or you can have, or if you really want, you can have the matzo ball. But you know what? I am not going to choose. So I'm going to eat both. The first I'm going to eat the latke. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adamah. Amen. Oh, so good. Once a year, I'll do this. And then, I just don't want to stop, but my real favorite, these are my real favorite. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei mizonot. Which wins? My book, this one does. Chag Sameach.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Chaplain Ezra Frazier. I'm a reserve chaplain at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. And the purpose of this video is to discuss for a moment some of the meaning behind the military victory that went into the holiday of Hanukkah. So I think for some of us, the better known part of the holiday of Hanukkah nowadays might be the miracle of the oil, which is represented through the lighting of the menorah. But if you lived in the time of the Maccabees, the thing that you were really excited about was that the Maccabees had defeated the Syrian Greeks, had, from your perspective, liberated the land of Israel from the Syrian Greeks, who had been persecuting the Jews of that generation and preventing them from practicing many of the practices and rituals of Judaism. This military victory story, the narrative of it, is described in the Book of Maccabees, and I thought it would be worth taking a look at one particular detail of it that I think is especially meaningful to us as members of the armed forces. So the story tells us that Matityahu, cried out with this loud voice, saying, Mila Shem Elai, whoever is zealous for God and for the Torah, for the law, should come out with me. And he and his sons flee to the hills and prepare to do battle against the Syrian Greek army, which had been preventing Jews from practicing the Judaism in the land of Israel. And now this fascinating incident happens, that there are many individuals like Matityahu and his sons, the Maccabees, who are sort of hiding out in the wilderness, and the Greeks attack them, right? So you have these officials, these troops, coming with the king, who want to go out and try to, smoke the Maccabees out of these caves in the wilderness. So we're told many pursued them and overtook them. They encamped opposite them and prepared for battle against them on the Sabbath day. So it's Shabbat now, it's Saturday, and there's a battle brewing. And any Jewish service member who practices Shabbat, who is committed to military service, could imagine how these values can come into conflict. And what do you do when these values conflict with each other? So we're told over here, they said to them, enough of this, come out, do what the king commands and you will live. So they're saying, look, if you just surrender to the will of the king, we'll spare your lives. And these Jews who are out in the wilderness hiding, they're the ones who don't want to surrender, right? They say, we will not come out, nor will we do what the king commands, and so profane the Sabbath day. And so they say, we're not going to come out. We want to take a stand over Shabbat. We're not going to violate Shabbat just because you're asking us to. And so the enemy quickly attacks them. And even while they're being attacked, they don't want to fight back because it's Shabbat. And so the enemy, the Greeks, attack them on Shabbat and they die with their wives and children and livestock, 1,000 persons. And from one perspective, you might say these people are heroes, right? They died standing up for Shabbat. They understood the Greeks were trying to prevent them from keeping Shabbat as one more example of a way that Greeks are trying to erase their Jewish identity. And they said, we're not going to give in to that. And yet at the same time, if you're an educated Jew in the military, hopefully you're aware, because this could come up for you, that if there's any risk to human life on Shabbat, you're supposed to violate Shabbat to save the life. And that's true in battle as well. And so maybe they should have fought back. And so Matityahu hears about this, Mattathias, Matityahu, the lead, Judah Maccabee's father. And first of all, they mourn these people. It's tragic that these Jews lost their entire families. But in addition, he sets out this very clear perspective that we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to lie down next time and let them massacre us on Shabbat. He says very clearly here that in the future, if this happens, they're going to destroy us if they just know the trick is you attack the Jews on Shabbat and they take it lying down. And so they said, you know what, if this happens again, let us fight against anyone who comes to attack us on the Sabbath day. We're not going to die like that if they come. And in fact, that's what happens, that he gathers together these mighty warriors who fight valiantly, and they eventually do defeat the Syrian Greeks. And it's very striking to me to think about this in the context of some dilemmas we might deal with as Jews in our own military service, in the sense that on the one hand, it's important to fight for our principles, but you also have to be reasonable, especially when lives are at stake. And indeed, the accepted halacha that the rabbis of the Talmud and later codifiers of halacha, of Jewish law, accepted is to follow Matityahu's model over here. It's widely accepted in the Talmud and in later codes of Maimonides and the Shulchan Aruch that saving a life takes precedence over Shabbat. And so it's interesting how, on the one hand, Judaism survives because, in principle, people like the Maccabees were willing to risk their lives for their Judaism. They were willing to put their lives on the line and fight back against the Greeks. And yet at the same time they put their lives on the line, they were thoughtful about it. They understood that doesn't mean that you die passively over the fact you don't violate Shabbat. It means you fight for things like Shabbat, you fight for Judaism, and you do everything you can to win that fight so that by winning not only the battle but also the war, you're around to pass on Judaism to the next generation. And so I find their battle very inspiring in that sense. Not only did they fight valiantly, but they understood what role their faith and their Judaism played within that it inspired them to do what they were doing. And at the same time, they found a way, rather than losing the battle and dying as a martyr in the name of their Judaism, to win the battle in the name of their Judaism, to survive as living heroes, to practice their Judaism and to pass it on down all the way to this very day through the message of Hanukkah. I want to wish you all a happy Hanukkah wherever you are stationed in the world. Thank you for keeping us safe and sound here in the US.